In this video, I'm going to show you how to take a pair of tight pants and turn them into a pair of comfortable, breezy shorts using this as my inspiration. When I saw these pants in the thrift store, I suspected they were too small, but I liked the fabric and the color, so I got them anyway. So I'm going to make them bigger by turning them into shorts and using the fabric from the legs to widen them. I've done this refashion before a few times, and the tricky part is always sewing the waistband on the sides. So this time I'm going to add the extra section to the waistband at the back instead of the sides, which will involve a little more work but will look neater in the end, hopefully. So let's get started. First, I cut off the cuffs of the pants, which I'm going to use for the waistband. If your pants don't have cuffs, just make sure you set aside a section of fabric large enough to extend the waistband. For reference, mine was 4.5 by 5 inches. You can also use the waistband from another pair of pants if you have one. To cut the shorts, I folded one leg up to where the pant fabric starts inside the waistband so that the panel would be the same length as the leg. After cutting the pant leg at the fold, I used the scrap as a pattern to cut the other leg. To determine the size of the side panels, I used my favorite, but falling apart, pair of shorts as a guide to estimate how much I'd need to add at the waist and at the sides. For me, that was about 1 inch, which I doubled to account for the fold. Then I added 1 inch for seam allowance, so the final width of my panels came to 3 inches, which seems like a lot, but it's fine because it'll give me room to adjust them later if they're too big. Cut the 2 side panels from one of the pant legs. Now we're going to dismantle the shorts, which might take a minute. First, seam rip both the top and the bottom of the center belt loop. Then seam rip the bottoms only of the other loops on the back. Open the waistband from one side seam to the other, plus 1 inch or 2 extra. Seam rip or cut the center back waistband. Then seam rip the side seams. Check to see if any of the seams are sewn with a chain stitch, which comes apart very easily. Seam rip a small section first, then pull on a thread to see if it comes undone. If not, try on the other end of the seam. It only works in one direction. If not, you may have to open the seam another way, but it's very rewarding when it works. Another option is to simply cut the side seams off, but if you do, remember to compensate with extra seam allowance. Here's what the shorts should look like at this point, and now we're ready to start sewing. While the waistband is detached, I'm going to repair this back seam which has come undone. This is what happens when you squeeze yourself into a pair of pants which are too small. The seam itself is okay, so I'm just going to remove and resew this top row of stitching. To sew the side panels, first finish one side of each panel with a zigzag stitch. Pin the panel to the front of the shorts with the right sides facing. Then sew the finished side of the panels to the fronts of the shorts. I'm trying to match the existing seams as much as possible. Iron the panels down on both sides. Top stitch along the edge as close to the fold as possible. This will keep the seams nice and flat. Pin the back of the pants to the side panel and try the shorts on to make sure you like the fit. Mine were a little too big, so I trimmed the panels by about 1/2 inch. Sew along the original stitches of the pant if you want to keep the fade details. Finish the edges using your method of choice. I used a zigzag stitch. My pants have flat felt seams on the sides, which is unusual, but I wanted to keep the look, so I top stitched using the previous stitch holes as a guide. Your pants probably don't have this detail, so you can skip this step. Every project has a tricky part. In this one, it's the waistband. To calculate the size for the waistband insert, unfold the existing waistband. If your waistband has a seam at the top, like mine, pin the seam allowance to one side and measure the height of the waistband, including the seam allowances. For the length, measure the width of the gap in the back of the waistband and add 1 inch for seam allowance. Add another inch if there's no seam allowance on the original waistband. For reference, my measurements were 4.5 inches for the height of the waistband and 5 inches for the length. Unfold the waistband and the insert and line them up with the right sides of the fabric facing. Make sure the top edges of the waistbands are aligned. Pin into place. Sew together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Repeat on the other side. Trim the excess seam allowance, and this is what the waistband should look like at this point. Then trim the insert to make sure it's the same size as the waistband. Iron the seam allowances away from the original waistband to reduce bulk. Fold the edges of the insert up to match the hems of the waistband and iron into place. Then fold it in half and iron it again. Iron the rest of the waistband, making sure everything is nice and flat. Carefully pin the waistband to the shorts by placing the pins directly on the seam on the outside of the waistband and making sure they catch the waistband on the inside. And continue all the way around the waistband. Sew the waistband to the shorts. Start on the existing seam, back tack, then sew all the way around to the other seam, making sure to sew in the existing holes if possible. This is the most critical step of the process because you want the seam to catch the waistband on both sides. When you get to the existing seam, back tack to secure both seams. Check to make sure the stitches caught the inside of the waistband as well as the outside. Stitch along the top of the waistband insert to keep it flat. Start on the original stitches, back tack, sew across the insert and to the stitches on the other side and back tack again. To reattach the belt loops, sew them with a tight zigzag stitch. I used a length of 1 and a width of 1, or you can use a straight stitch and back tack a few times. Trim the length of the panels or the length of the shorts as needed. To hem the shorts, on the wrong side of the fabric, turn up the raw edge a 1/2 inch or so and iron into place. Continue around the entire hem. Turn the folded edge up another 1/2 inch, iron again, and pin into place. Starting at the crotch seam, sew close to the fold all the way around the hem. Once you reach the beginning of the seam, sew over it and back tack to secure. Repeat on the other leg, and that's it. We're done. And here's the result. First, I wanted to show you how the waistband turned out in case you want to try this yourself. As you can see, the sides look nice and neat, and the extra section in the back is less noticeable than when it's on the side. So this is the most professional looking way to widen pants of the methods I've tried so far. Because these shorts are so wide, they're almost like a skirt, which was exactly what I was hoping for. So now I have a super comfortable pair of shorts, which I'm not embarrassed to wear in public, so I'm sure I'll get a lot of use out of them. And I hope this inspires you to try your own refashioning project. Thanks for watching, and happy upcycling!